let's talk about the self, or more specifically, no self. You've probably heard of no self being spoken about in videos online or in talks, in books. You might have heard it on like different terminology. Anatta or Anatman is one of the terms that's used in Pali or Sanskrit. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because no self, as it's spoken about nowadays, as I've heard it spoken about nowadays, it sounds like a thing that you get, like an attainment or a stage on the path. Like, I'm going to get to the no self stage. You can see how it kind of falls down immediately. I am going to realize no self. And at that stage, when no self is realized, then there'll be freedom, there'll be happiness, there'll be enlightenment, ultimate satisfaction. And it's tricky, isn't it? Because really, historically, that's not really what no self is about. It's not really what anatta, no self as a description, is pointing to. It's pointing to one of the marks of conditioned existence. So, yeah, in the past, when anatta was discussed or explored, it's not saying that you or I will attain a state of anatta, a state of no self, and will be free. Really, it was used to point to this world around us, the conditioned world around us, the world of conditions and phenomena that rise and cease, that come and go. And one of the marks of conditioned existence is no self. There is no self to be found in these rising and ceasing conditions. And that's it. That's pretty much it. It's not a stage you get to and a thing that you suddenly win. Like you get to realize you have the least self of anyone and therefore are the most free. Or a thing you work really hard towards. I'm going to really dig in and I'm going to realize through insight and meditation and inquiry the most no self aspect of this life. It's not really what that's about. No self is just a descriptor. It's a descriptor of the way things are. And the realization and awakening process is awakening to the nature of this, the nature of conditions, the nature of life. And the nature of conditions is, or one of them, one of the marks of conditioned existence is that these conditions that come and go, and you've seen me do this before, arise and cease. It just seems like a nice little kind of analogy. But yeah, like these conditions seem to arise from nowhere, hang around nowhere, and then cease back into nowhere. But these conditions are anatta, no self. And recognizing that that's the nature of conditioned existence, once we recognize that deeply in our being, in our body, then there's freedom. And that's it, it's beautiful. It's a really great way to reflect as well. We can recognize that the conditions that are troubling us and the conditions that are bringing us a lot of joy, they're not substantial in any way. There's no self either to be identified here in those conditions or self to be identified over there in the conditions. No concrete existence, no real substantial existence there or here. It's just conditions arising and ceasing. It can be difficult and troublesome when no self is seen or viewed as an achievement, a stage to get to on the path, because, well, it's delusional, ultimately. It's still rooted in duality and rooted in a self trying to get something in the future. It's like, I will achieve this thing, this thing that doesn't have any essence. I'm going to get no self, I'm going to attain no self. well, who's the one that could attain it? And what's the thing that could be attained? You can see it just doesn't really work. So when talking about no self or talking about anatta, on the path of awakening, just be aware of how the mind wants to make it into a goal almost. Like a goal to be achieved. Like, I'm going to achieve the insight of no self. And then I'm going to get something. I'm going to get freedom. I'm going to get, liberation. I'm going to get enlightenment. And that often can hold us back. It can often be one of the many fetters that bind us to these conditions that come and go. So the reflection that I encourage is just to gently notice how we project self and other and substantiality onto the world of conditions. And notice that one of the marks of conditioned existence is that there is no self here. There's no substantiality here. And when we project it, that selfhood onto conditions, well, we attach, we grab hold of them, we give conditions that never really had any lasting stickiness, we give them stickiness so that we can try and grab them and create a point of view, a self from which to operate in the world. And we just notice that. You just notice it. And you continue to notice it because it's a natural movement of the mind to operate in the world of form, in the world of things. There are conventional things in the world. There are conventional others. There's conventionally us. And we do need to navigate that. I apparently need to drive my car to work so I can earn a living, so that I can pay my bills. Those things do have to be done. And yet, all of those things I've just described are conventional interpretations on conditions that apparently come and go, that had no real lasting substantiality. And also, there's no self there. They are selfless. And there never was a self to be found in conditions. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? It can sound a little bit like, when you start talking about no self, it can sound to the thinking mind confusing, because we try to imagine what a no self would be. We certainly imagine a future no self, which is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to be the no self Simon that is free. It's like, it's just this backwards cycle of, the same delusional habit. But we don't need to do anything. We don't need to do that, certainly. What we can do is just be aware, open to the way things are, moment by moment, and recognize the marks or the nature of conditions. And one of those marks of these conditions is that there's no self, no other, no substantiality in the things that come and go.